would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please don't hold that against me. Welcome to the middle of the week, everyone. Glad you've decided to join us. I do realize that in the last show, I teased a new bit of information relating to the agents that have been talking to me or reaching out to me through the Zillow status of my property. I apologize for forgetting to do that at the end of the last show. I will do that at the beginning of this show just so we make sure and cover it because it's a big deal. It definitely shifts the data just a teeny bit, but at least it's a little ray of sunshine in an otherwise cloudy sky. If you'd like to reach out and get in touch with me, feel free to do that at the website, therebelbroker.com. Click on the link Contact in the menu bar, and you'll be given an opportunity to send along any of your ideas, suggestions, or questions that you might have. Happy to take a look at them. And of course, it is that time of the month again when we start thinking about doing another drawing for the winner of a $50 Amazon gift card. For those of you who don't know what that is, about once a month for the last, 4 or 5 months, we have been doing drawings for $50 Amazon gift card for those folks who go to therebelbroker.com, go to the top of the page and click on the button that says take the survey to support the show. Use the same email address both times you're asked, answer a few survey-style questions, and you're all done. And you've done two things. You've helped the show grow, which I'm forever in your debt for, and you've entered yourself into the drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. Now, we've already given away $250 or $300. I've kind of lost count at this point, but we'll be doing that again at the end of this week at 5 p.m. Pacific time will be the cutoff. So as long as you get yourself through that process before 5 o'clock Pacific time, your email will be in the drawing for this $50 Amazon gift card. So good luck to you and congratulations to all the folks who've already won. And just so you know, it needs to be a valid email address because that's ultimately how you'll receive the gift card. It'll be emailed to you directly from Amazon, and I'll be verifying that the email address is good before I send the gift card to you. So just make sure it's an email address you actually can respond to and you get email at. I haven't had a problem yet. I've managed to get in contact with everyone who has submitted an email address, so that's all worked out great. I just would probably be good to mention that up front so you know not to use an email address that you don't really check or don't really get access to too much. All right, folks, what else? Is there anything else in the housekeeping? Yes, there is the housekeeping of living up to my promise of giving you an update. So for those of you who are new to the show or just want a quick update on my situation, we've spent some bandwidth over the last few months talking about my plans to sell my property and then potentially leverage the proceeds from that into a new residence for myself, plus also potentially an investment. So I am moving forward with that, and part of that plan has been to do some remodeling in my home. And I thought that it would be a good opportunity in the time leading up to when I've absolutely committed to that remodeling work to create a window of time that would let me accelerate my schedule. So what I did is I went onto Zillow, and they have a feature called Make Me Move. So I went into the Make Me Move section and I input my address and I input the Make Me Move amount. Now, what this amount of money is basically what I would settle for, assuming a buyer were to come to me and I'm not going to be having to pay any commissions. All we have to do is pay the usual fees and taxes to work through the process. But it's minus all of the amounts of money I was planning on spending on doing remodeling. So it would be a way for someone to purchase my property, do all the remodeling I was planning on doing, but to their own style. And then once they're done, actually have a home that is worth more than what they paid for it, plus what they paid to do the remodeling, because that was the number I picked. I picked a number where they would easily realize about $50,000 to $100,000 worth of equity immediately. And the other thing that would be a benefit to them is the home would be paying less in property taxes because the sales amount would be less, right? And that's what is the new metric to establish what your tax rolls are going to be. So I thought that'd be a good opportunity for me to potentially do that. Not something I was pushing horribly. I thought it'd be great to have as a card to play if the opportunity presented itself. Now, in that, I had 2 contacts that felt like real people, sort of, but they didn't really go anywhere. Those folks just sort of faded away, so to speak. So I'm not sure if those were folks that were fishing, if those were actually real estate people, but I'm not counting them in my tally. But to bring you up to date, not including those first 2, I've had a grand total of 16 contacts from real estate people over the course of the last, I think I've had it up there for a month and a half, 2 months. And 100% of them, it started the contact with a lie, and the lie took one of a couple of forms. It was either I have a buyer. I would like to have you entertain an offer on your property, and the other was I am an investor and I want to buy your property as an investment. Great. Without fail, every single one of those realtor contacts where those were the approaches ended up being lies. And I think I don't remember if I named the show The Lies Realtors Tell or Lies Real Estate Agents Tell or whatever. But do a little Google search or do a search at my website, therebelbroker.com, to track that one down. I think it's only a week or 2 old, where I go into more detail in that. But on Sunday, I actually got one contact from a real estate agent that was absolutely 100% honest. So the tally is 16. It's not 17. It's 16, including this real estate agent who contacted me on Sunday. Let me read to you her message. And this is the kind of message you should expect to get. And I want to encourage everyone out there, if the first contact you get from an agent is built on a lie or a deception, or is intentionally left vague so that they can hide the lie in the vagueness, do not work with them. The only way we can stop this kind of stuff from happening is to not reward it. So as much wide influence as I have on the world of folks who are going to buy real estate, don't work with these people. They don't deserve your time. They don't deserve your effort. And above all, they don't deserve your money. But let me read to you the message. And I think this is an absolutely 100% on the mark note that you should get from an agent. And I have saved this lady's information. I would love to tell you who she is and give you her contact information, even though she works in the same market I do. But she hasn't replied. I sent her a message asking her if it would be okay if I gave her a plug in the show, and she hasn't yet replied to me. So if she does reply, I'll be happy to share her information and give her a plug. But until then, I don't feel right doing it without her permission. So let me just read to you what her message was. Okay. Hello. I saw your home on Zillow and wanted to know if you are still interested in selling it. I am an agent, but not the pushy type. I'll respect your privacy. I'm familiar with this area and have lived in Jackson Oaks, which is a community right next door to mine. I don't charge as much as most agents and offer more free services like staging if needed. Plus, I donate 20% to local charities. If you're interested in selling soon, give me a call to chat. No pressure. Sincerely. And then she gives me her name. Now, the downside here is that I love this. If I were a person looking to sell my property who was not a licensed real estate agent, this is the person I would respond to. The downside is that she doesn't really give me much contact information for her. I was able to discover it, but anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. And this is exactly the kind of person that deserves the opportunity to show you what else she brings to the table in terms of her abilities in real estate. That should be the opening gambit for you. If someone is looking to establish a fiduciary responsibility with you, where they are your representative and they are working for your best interests, someone who begins that relationship with this kind of an overture is who you want. Someone who claims because remember, a fiduciary relationship implies that they're going to be out there trying to work for your best interests. And anyone who approaches you saying with an approach that is based on a lie or a deception, with the desire to then be someone who looks out for your interests, I'm personally not comfortable with that. So I would hope you would not be too. So please work to not reward folks who conduct themselves this way. So, okay. So there's that little tidbit. Now we've got several interesting things on today's show. In fact, I've got so much laid out in front of me. I'm not sure we can make it in a reasonable amount of time. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and talk New York first. Manhattan property prices come down is the headline from CNBC. Now, this is a video story that's up on CNBC. I'll be happy to post that. It's interesting if that's how you want to consume it. But what's really interesting are the numbers, and those get presented by the folks at Zero Hedge. At the end of the fourth quarter of 2016, we noted that New York City real estate sales volumes were collapsing as sellers seemed to be having a difficult time accepting the fact that clearing prices had dropped below their exorbitant asking prices. Here was their conclusion then, and we talked about that actually at the time that it came over. But now we're in quarter one. We already covered quarter four of last year, so it is very interesting to see what the first quarter of 2016 is showing. As we look at the median sales price, the first quarter of 2017, still an incredibly insane $1.1 million. But from let's see, from a year-to-year basis, it's down 3.3%. It's actually up from the fourth quarter by 4.8%, but I prefer to use year over year, right? We try to use year over year whenever we can, simply because it eliminates seasonal influences, and that is a much better metric to use. Now, the number of sales closed is also interesting. It's 2,892 in the first quarter of 2017, and the year-to-year change is up 0.5. So what I find interesting about that is this does not tell us that this is because of a lack of market activity, right? The number of closed sales, the volume of sales is actually as good, or if not a little bit better. It's almost the same number, but it's up from the same time last year. So great. But that since prices have gone down 3.3%, that indicates that the buying public just ain't buying at those high prices. The listing discount from the list price in the first quarter of 2017 was 4.2%, and in the first quarter of 2016 it was 2.1%. So the discount has doubled in terms of the marketplace of New York. Now, why do we care about New York? Well, New York, for me, it's not. I mean, I'm not in an East Coast market, right? I'm in a California, Northern California, San Francisco Bay Area market. So it for me personally, in my local marketplace, doesn't mean a whole lot. However, New York is usually one of those markets you look at to try to discern trends. What's going to happen? Markets that tend to do that: New York, Miami tends to be one for interesting reasons, and I tend to look at some things with Miami and not others, just because Miami is kind of an odd one. But then there's also Los Angeles. There is Phoenix is one I tend to look at, and then there's also locally my area. So these bigger areas, you try to discern what trends are. And when you see a weakness in some of the bigger metro markets, that's an interesting thing to keep track of, because what you want to look at and see if there are any slowdowns at the very least, if not downright downturns in other big markets, because that could indicate something coming down the pike. Now, we've already talked about some very interesting things that plug into this. We could refer back to confidence numbers. We could refer back to a variety of different things that tend to indicate the confidence that folks have is increasing in general. So it becomes interesting to try to explain, why are we seeing this generic it seems to be simply a local marketplace where buyers have decided we're not going to pay these prices. We are simply going to not do it. But there's still just as many things are getting closed, but things are getting closed for less. So that's a genuine price slowdown in that specific market. Now, if you'd like to check out these numbers for yourself, of course, as always, I will provide links to these stories in the show notes for today's show. They will also be actually, the way I'm doing the show notes now, these will also be included in just the general notes for the show, but I don't believe that the links survive getting posted to iTunes. So you would need to go to therebelbroker.com in order to get to the linkable show notes that don't just give you the title of the article, but actually also include that link. So feel free to find that there. This stuff all gets posted to the website at the same time the show goes live. So the minute the show is available for you to listen to, it's available for you at the website. So you can take advantage of that if you would like. All right. So that covers the interesting things happening in New York. In general, more data. House prices up 7% year over year in February. Now, if you remember, the last time we talked about these numbers was last month, and in January, prices had gone up 6.9%. So basically the same amount of increase from last year to this year. Now, what's interesting is we normally, in my marketplace, would start to see an acceleration. It's a seasonal thing. So month to month, we're likely to actually see even more increases here in my marketplace. But year to year, it should be on par. It'll just be interesting to see if we're seeing the same kind of increases we were seeing the prior year. So those are pretty big numbers, and it indicates a continuing lack of inventory, which is just causing prices to go up because buyers are just not having enough homes to choose from. So we'll see how that plays out. Now, one thing I wanted to point out, because remember, one of the things that we have been tracking here for a while now is just debt. Right? We want to get a feeling for what the debt burden is. Last time around, one of the big things was the debt burden specifically as it related to homes. But the reality is what the thing is not as important as the fact that you have it, right? Because our response to overwhelming debt can oftentimes be the same regardless of where that burden of debt comes from. If we find that we suddenly can't make payments on things because of a certain kind of debt, well, we may find ourselves in a position where we make the same choices with one difference. And this is the critical part, and it's sort of the part of the puzzle I'm waiting to see if it pops up. And that is, last time, the rational decision for an awful lot of homeowners was to back out of their mortgages because their home was now worth less than what they paid for it. That's another thing to keep in mind, because that's one element where we've kind of seen little indicators that stuff might happen, but with numbers like what we're seeing today in terms of price growth of 7% year over year on homes, that doesn't seem like something to be hugely worried about. But there's one other piece of data I wanted to throw at you relating to home equity lines of credit. Now, we're going to discuss that in just a second, but before we do, we're going to take a quick break. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. We're just starting to dive into the next interesting story for today, which is relating to HELOCs. We've talked about a lot of different kinds of debt over the last few months that are concerning. We've talked about student loans. We've talked about which is now a debt bubble that is bigger than what the real estate bubble was, right? 1.3 trillion for the housing market last time around, 1.31 trillion right now for education. We've also talked about the car loan bubble that is pretty crazy. What's interesting is we've actually seen the first decrease in home sales since 2009 this month. So maybe that is about to slow down. But what is a bummer, and this is something we've talked about before that we've seen a little bit of blips on, is getting more resurgence. And there's no question that in many cases, this relates specifically to the increases in property values that we've seen. Millennials lead other generations in rising HELOC trend. And HELOCs are expected to replace the lower than normal number of refis that have been going on. Now, why should this worry you? Because it's about debt. And when you add a HELOC, the big ball of debt related to your home simply gets bigger. And once you've done that, brings your level of debt up to at least 80% of the value of your home. So you keep the population of homes that are folks that are homeowners in this constant position of chasing the value of their home. And you end up having really only a realistic buffer of that 20%. Now, that's a pretty good buffer. We've talked about that before. I think that's a respectable buffer. But once you get yourself into that position and then you look at the overall debt picture and you start to see these other things that could be gigantic, and particularly when you consider millennials also happen to be that segment of the population that also are disproportionately represented in that student loan bubble we were just talking about. The total amount of loan that's being held, or total amount of debt that's being held in terms of student loans, HELOCs, first mortgages, auto debt, this becomes a scary thing. And what we need to find, or I guess the better way to phrase that is the thing we need to try to prevent or hope does not happen, is that property values start to take a decline. And there's a variety of ways that could simply happen. If we started to see demand really go through the floor. And, when we look at things, we talk about how demand is so high right now, right? And it is compared to the inventory. But if you look at demand overall, if we had historically average numbers of new housing units being created, we'd be well above what I think the current demand is. At least at this point. In the past, when we've looked at these numbers, demand was just so high. We've had times last year and the year before where there were so many multiple offers for a home. I at that time was talking about how even if we were doing the average number of homes, we still wouldn't be meeting demand. And I at that time, I think that was true. But given what I'm seeing now, and this is a little bit informed from my experience with my local marketplace, I'm seeing a gigantic number of homes coming on the market all of a sudden. And I'm interested to see how fast they go. But so much of these homes are now priced at a point where they're obviously pushing the top limit. And I'm anxious to see how this goes. Now, there are certain markets where buying just has to happen. More areas are growing. Maybe there's hiring going on. There's a net growth in migration to that particular community. But I'll tell you, there's more than one way for values to drop. And I'm going to be interested to see what kind of trends pop up that might point to that. It could be tons more homes come on the market. Okay. Is that likely? No. Unless sellers decide in huge numbers it's time to sell. But of course, we can't control that, right? And it's a difficult thing to anticipate. With the confidence numbers we've heard, it wouldn't surprise me. I mentioned this earlier this year. With a lot of the confidence numbers we've heard, specifically as it relates to people's attitudes about selling their homes, I think we could see that. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to potentially anticipate. But so far, I haven't really seen anything that really shows that, except for in my local market where I have seen more homes listed in what you would consider the meat and potatoes listing number, like 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a lot of homes that have been priced at right around the average price for the community, or maybe just a little bit higher. In some cases, lower that need some upgrading, but they're there, right? There's an awful lot of them available right now. As I mentioned on Sunday, I saw, I think it was a dozen new listings came up between the areas of Morgan Hill and Gilroy that I serve. And it was kind of mind blowing. And I'm limiting that to properties that are, again, 3 bedroom, 2 bath or more, and under, I think I have the number set to under 800,000. So that is the high end of the average. The average for Morgan Hill is at the high end of 700s. So that's an awful lot of houses that are hovering around that midpoint or lower. And And it's interesting to see that some of them are staying on the market longer than others. So we'll continue looking through that. I looked at that list again today, and still a very large list. And I'm just, and because Morgan Hill and Gilroy tend to be leading edge communities in terms of when things start to slow down or not go as well in the real estate market, you tend to see it here first. It tends to happen here first, and then and that's what happened last time. We saw it happening in places like Gilroy first, and then that sort of extends off to the north into closer to the heart of Silicon Valley. But I wanted to point that out relating to HELOCs because I think that that's a very interesting data point, and it's a concerning data point. So definitely keep that on your radar and see if any of these things fit with your local marketplace. Being aware of these things, these trends in your marketplace, I think are a very important thing to understand. And when I say your marketplace, I'm specifically talking about the places you're interested in investing or where you're looking to buy or to flip. Well, whatever you're looking to do, knowing these kinds of trends, I think is important for you to make smarter decisions. All right, so moving on, it is that time of year where staging becomes important. Some of what I've talked about involves staging. If I was a real estate broker who had come to my house to look at it, which I did, I'd put on my broker hat and looked at my own house, came up with a long list of things to do, and I have not been as good of a client of myself as some other clients I've had in the past, just because of if you're judging just by the length of the list of things I had to do. So I'm still working on those, but I came across an article from Realty Times, How to Stage Your Home While You Live in It, that I thought was interesting. And this might be good for you folks who are looking to get your home on the market. Maybe you're an investor who is what I like to call a leapfrog investor, where you buy a home, you live in it, you fix it up while you're in it, and then you stage it to get sold. And I think things like this are great advice. And this shared three very basic ones, or three or four. I can't remember if it was three or four. I think it was three. But I thought we'd share these. And then I'd run through a few more that are a little bit more specific. Now, number one on their list is remove all signs of personalization. And I've mentioned this before. I think this is a smart way to move. You want people to be able to template their life over your home. So you don't want pictures of the kids. You don't want those vacation photos. You don't want the stuff that's personal to you. You don't want your crystal Tinkerbell collection on display. They should have to kind of imagine the place occupied by themselves. So you want to present them with a little bit more of a blank canvas. They shouldn't feel like they're walking through your home. They should feel like they're walking through a place that could be their home. So photographs are the first thing. Sports trophies, anything like religious icons, calendars, they're mentioning these specifically, home movies and more, you should remove those. There should be no signs of personalization that tell the buyer anything about you and your family. And what's interesting about this is also a security thing. It's not a huge deal. I've never had this happen. However, when I have clients who have children, I don't want to see anything in there that talks about what school they go to, what grade they're in. I don't want to see any of that stuff. I don't want photos of them in the cheerleading squad. I don't want anything that could potentially be used by someone who is a scumbag. Now, of course, whenever we show your house, they're escorted, but I'd rather not take any chances. So I think that's just a smart move to make. The other thing I will add to this is if you have a little bowl that you keep by the front door and it has all the keys to all your various things, get rid of that. Don't leave around phones. Don't leave around keys. Again, I've been doing this since 1988. I have never met an agent who has ever had an issue where things got stolen or any of those kinds of things. Now, has that happened? Sure. I mean, I read articles about it happening all the time, but it happens seldom enough that despite the fact I've been doing this for a really long time, I've never personally encountered it. Okay. Next, you want to clearly define each room, and that may mean simplifying. In my case, I'm doing that a lot. You need to take the room and give it a purpose. And bedrooms are easy, right? But in my case, I have a really large great room that sort of evolved into the kids' playroom, and there is nothing worse than that because A, it's part of the personalization problem, and B, it's not going to resonate with folks who don't have kids. So you want to make this a template that they're overlaying their interests on. So what I've had to do is I had to go through and get rid of all the stuff that was the play stuff, the bins of toys. And, frankly, at the age my kids are, stuff they don't touch it anymore anyway. And believe me, the process of asking them what of these things mean something to you? Which of these things should I hold on to? So when you're older, you want to give them to your kids, whatever process you have to go through, just get all that junk out of there. And in the process of doing that, I've also gotten rid of 2 bookshelves. And remember, I'm the book guy. So I'm that client who has 10 bookshelves crammed full of books. I have packed up nearly every book in the house. I have put in storage 5 bookcases. I have 2 more that are going to go into storage. I've left 1 bookcase up that is only 50% populated by books, and the rest will just be more generic decoration. The piece of furniture that's a bookshelf itself is kind of a nice placeholder. But then I've also gotten rid of 2 very large cabinets that were in that room that held, the board games and the other fun stuff. So all of those things have been packed up and are now in storage or waiting to be taken to storage. But you really want to achieve a feeling of openness, and you want to make it be something that folks can look at and say, I could imagine my stuff in here. So what I've really whittled it down to in that great room is the entertainment area where there's a large screen TV connected to to an Xbox and some other gaming style stuff, and the couch. And that's it. There used to be another chair in there. It was a recliner style chair, but that doesn't need to be there. So now you can walk through that entire area without ever having to turn sideways. You don't have to do any weird movements of your body to navigate the room easily and walk around the entire space. That's what you want. You want to be able to straight ahead walk around everything and be able to navigate the space. The dining room was easy. There's just a dining room table there, so that's all I left. There also was a little keyboard that when I was trying to con the kids into doing piano lessons, we had in there. All that stuff goes into storage. Then the other room, we had kind of that was sort of the living room. Then the family room is another room with a couch that's got another TV in it, and that's right off of the kitchen. Remodeling that area to make it more open, getting rid of the cabinets that are between the kitchen and that area so that it's more open, improving the lighting, getting rid of one of the chairs so there's really just a couch in there. And again, it's wide open. And there's a fireplace in that, so make that the focal point rather than other things. I'm even toying with the idea of removing the television from that room just to simplify and make it clear, and keeping that fireplace as a central point of focus. Okay, next, make use of a storage unit. And this is something I did. One of the very first things I did was get a storage unit because I knew I would be packing up tons and tons of stuff. Be absolutely willing to do that. It's totally worth the cost. I don't know what storage units go for in your area. I'm paying something like $200 and something per month. Absolutely will pay off in terms of the desirability, the appeal of the property. It'll help the home sell faster. And actually, from the standpoint of moving, it'll actually make things easier because I can load up the moving truck, take everything that's currently still in the house to the new place, and then with one trip, just go to that storage unit, and it's all packed up anyway, and just load that all up into the truck, and then that makes it easy too. One of the most important things to do, and if you're trying to decide between just stacking that stuff up in your garage or putting it in storage to try to save that money, you're being penny wise and pound foolish, in my opinion. I think that it is far greater for you to be able to show a wide open garage that is very useful and has tons of useful space. For instance, I currently have way too much junk in my garage, and that's going to go away. That's kind of last on my list. But everything that's already in a box in my garage is going to go away. I am going to try to make it, because I have a nice wide and deep garage that has great cabinets and workspaces in it. So I just want to make sure those show as very open, easy to use places for people that still allow you to park 2 cars in it. So those are my suggestions, layered over these 3 suggestions. It's really about having that clean and unobstructed feel to the home. And in terms of a kitchen, you want to whittle your kitchen down just to the absolute essentials. So in my case, I'm packing up half the dishes. I'm packing up 50% of the glasses. I'm packing up all the random vases that seem to accumulate in a lifetime, so that everything is just really condensed and the feeling of openness and plenty of space is right there. So all things I would suggest you do. All right. One other thing I wanted to hit today, man, I'm cramming a lot in today's show. I could have made this one probably another show. We could have talked more about this topic, but this one is 4 popular design trends in model homes. Now we've covered this before. I like to do it about once every 6 months or so. But the reason why I cover it is because this is stuff that results from an awful lot of research. This isn't something that just gets made up. Typically, when you are looking at model homes, for instance, and one of my biggest suggestions, if you're a remodeler, if you're a flipper, if you're someone who's a brand new investor, or if you're a seller who's going to remodel before you sell your home, I suggest you go look at big name model homes and see what they have done. Take pictures. Check out the color palettes that they're using. Check out the design choices that they're making. Why? They paid a ton of money to figure out what is most appealing to buyers. This isn't random selections of designers. This is typically stuff that has been tested by going out and asking people or doing surveys or actually measuring the results when they do X, Y, or Z, which one resulted when the only thing that was a variable was this design choice, which ones ended up getting selected the majority of the time. So you have probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars that have been invested in this stuff, and you can get access to this info without paying for the process to get a hold of it. So it's a great way for you as a real estate person to grab onto these. And there's a few on here that I'm pretty happy about because I'm doing them. All right. So number 1 on their list is quartz countertops. And quartz countertops are interesting right now. According to this article from realtor.org, the magazine, buyers are showing a willingness to spend the most in upgrading their kitchens. And one of their first targeted upgrades tend to be the countertop. They're opting for quartz over granite. I have opted for quartz over granite. But what's interesting is you can say more wonderful things about quartz than you can about granite. Granite needs to be sealed every year. Quartz does not. Quartz is a really low maintenance thing, a really low maintenance countertop, and I think it's prettier. So I say go with quartz, and that's what I did. Number 2 is more windows. Now, lucky for me, my home is almost all windows on the front. Granted, if I wanted to update them, and you know what? Just as a note to all my listeners, I wish I could remember your name. I apologize. You and I talk frequently via messaging and whatnot. But I've decided not to upgrade my windows. I was going to upgrade my windows to dual pane, or not all of them, but just the gigantic ones at the front of my home. Decided not to do that because if it becomes an issue, I would rather credit the buyer a certain amount of money to do it. And since I know exactly how much that was going to cost, I know the maximum amount I'd have to credit. And given what I plan to list for and what it will likely sell for, given the other stuff I'm adding on, I'm perfectly cool with potentially entertaining that option. So thank you to the listeners who suggest that I not do the upgrading of the windows. But big windows are more desirable. They like the idea of bringing the outside in. And that is one thing I can definitely leverage off of with my house. The great room has gigantic windows on one side from floor to ceiling. So I think that'll be a good point for me. One thing I don't have, but I think is a wise decision, is going for wide plank hardwood flooring. Still, hardwood and tile flooring are the most in demand. I find folks like hardwood the most. They're opting for bigger plank widths and larger tiles. It could be just a scale thing. I agree with the larger tile thing as well myself, but they're experimenting with greater color options in hardwood. I suggest not doing that. Do not go with any experimental color options in hardwood. Hardwood is not a place where you want to do experiments. Hardwood is where you want to either focus on lighter or darker and then just take into consideration the hardness of the wood. I've got a great Brazilian cherry that's got sort of a rich redness to it that folks tend to like. So I'm pretty cool with that. I think if I was doing it again today, I'd probably go a little bit lighter, but I offset that hardwood floor, that slightly darker wood, with much lighter walls. So I think that made a good balance. Owners' entries. Model homes are also showing off drop zones, according to the article, but places for more than just to hang your coat or stow your shoes away. These drop zones are serving as places for your keys, electronics, and a central command post for automated systems. So this is also something where I have a great little area right in the entry part of my home that could serve this purpose. Right now, it's where the kids dump their shoes, and it's where, when I'm riding my motorcycle, I dump my helmet and these other types of wonderful things. But it's a lovely little area that used to be. And this is something to consider when you're looking at your properties. You can turn an absolute, ridiculous, horrible negative into a positive. So when I bought this house, in the area where I now have this great entry area that's pretty versatile and I could do a lot of different things with, used to be dirt. Yeah, it was dirt. And it had vines and stuff. So and this was inside the house. For the first couple of years, I took a fountain and put it on the dirt, and we had a fountain going there. I ultimately couldn't stand the dirt anymore. Imagine the smell of soil in your house all the time. Maybe some folks love that. The average person does not. I ripped that sucker out and got that tiled over and turned it into this nice little area where the kids could dump their backpacks and shoes and all that kind of stuff. But even things like, and that was a super cheap switchover. I was able to I demolished all the weird stuff that was keeping the dirt in myself. I took all the dirt out and then did all the things I needed to do to put a new concrete base in there. And I think out the door, I think I got that done for less than a couple of grand, and having people come in and give me some help to get a lot of it done. So it's the idea also of reimagining things that are a downside. If I'd left that in this house, that would have been a huge drag on any potential opportunity for me to get that thing sold. So just keep those things in mind as you're working through your properties as well. Because remember, a lot of folks aren't going to see it the way you see it. They're not going to walk into a house and see a big patch of dirt right next to the front door and say, "Oh, well, I could get rid of that." Particularly in my case, I mean, it had a cement thing. There was a border to it. And what's really nuts is once I got it all cleared out, it looks like someone had jackhammered through the cement slab to dirt to make it happen. So that was kind of fun. But in any event, things like that. Is that specifically something for that specific scenario? Sure. But the point is to take the things that in your head are the top 2 or 3 negatives and figure out a way to get rid of those negatives and turn them into positives. And in a lot of cases, it's not just about getting rid of dirt that's in the middle of your entry hall. It might be getting rid of those cabinets that are blocking the view from your kitchen to the living room. It might be knocking down a wall to open it up a little bit and give you a great room. It might be blowing up the ceiling so that the drywall ceiling you're currently seeing right now gets pushed all the way up to the rafters above, so you're giving yourself this amazing cathedral ceiling. Think in terms of those things, because you know what? Despite the fact all of those things might sound a little bit scary, by and large, they're not that expensive to do. And they can give you a huge advantage depending on what's going on with your marketplace and what buyers are really getting drawn to. All right, folks. I think that about covers it for today. As always, I certainly hope that I have given you more value in terms of what I've given you to think about than the time that you have spent listening to the show. It's always the goal. I absolutely want to walk away with you feeling like you've gotten more out of the deal. And of course, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you all next time.